Dr. Anthony Montegut. With over 18 years of experience in the field of medicine, he has held many positions as a physician and as an executive in the healthcare industry. He can help you with your health as well as your wealth. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Anthony Montegut.
Good evening, everyone. I feel like I should be running out with my hands down, tapping up everybody as I come through, like breaking through some big poster. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you about such important topics. Many people talk about health, especially now during this current pandemic. But it is important to recognize that there is an undisputable link between your health and your wealth. For example, studies show that children, the number one most important factor for determining a child's future socioeconomic status is the number of days that they're present in school. That's directly tied to a children's health usually. So the more days that a child misses in school, the less likely that child is to obtain a middle or even upper class socioeconomic status. But when we become adults, the number one connection to our health is our socioeconomic status. So even though our health is initially tied to our wealth, when we get older, our wealth is tied to our health. Unless we deal with both of those things at the same time with the same mindset dedicated to both, we're not going to have effective change. Even if you're successful in having money, what does it profit to a man to gain this whole world and lose his soul? How many people are there, rich people that you know of, that on their dying, with their dying breath, said that they wish that they could work one more day? No, they usually talk about their regrets of not taking care of their health. They usually talk about their regrets of not spending time taking care of those things that were important to them. So what I'd like to share with you in these brief few minutes is 7 baby steps to obtaining both success in your health as well as in your wealth. I know in order to get your attention, I got to grab you by the pocketbooks. So first, we're going to talk about the 7 baby steps that lead to financial health. You'll notice that I take these steps directly from the Dave Ramsey program, which you can find at daveramsey.com. But Dave Ramsey originally got these steps from a deceased person now by the name of Larry Burkett, who was the first Christian to sit down and catalog every single verse in the Bible that had something to do with finances and with investment. So that original organization was called Crown Financial Management or Crown Financial Ministries. And then Dave Ramsey came and took it and gave it more of a more modern spin. Before getting to those 7 baby steps, I want you to understand some key concepts. In 2017, the average monthly take-home pay was approximately $5,000 a month. That's roughly equal to about $60,000 a year. The average person spends eating out $250 to $450 a month. On cable, the average person spends $100. I don't know about you. I can't tell you the last time I saw a cable bill for only $100. On entertainment, the average household spends anywhere from $400 to $1,000 per month. Average person spends on coffee or whatever their Starbucks addiction is, $100 a month. On ATM fees, we're looking at another $50 to $100 a month, for a total of $900 to $1,750. I want you to keep that figure in mind, because as we go through these steps quickly, you're going to start to question if some of these numbers can be real. The 7 baby steps that are guaranteed, and you heard me right, guaranteed to lead you towards financial freedom and independent success are: number 1, saving up $1,000 emergency fund. We call that Murphy's insurance. You know the rule of Murphy's Law: whatever can go wrong will go wrong, but it's amazing what will not go wrong when you're prepared for it. Over 66% of Americans cannot handle a $1,000 emergency without resorting to debt, without resorting to either going to a credit card, asking family and friends, or resorting to a bank for a loan, or even worse, a payday loan, which can charge as much as 600% annual percentage rate for a loan. If you have $1,000 saved in your bank, think about the peace of mind that that will give you when your carburetor breaks down, when your HVAC system gives out, when you have an unexpected medical bill and you know that you can pay for that and not have to go in debt to try and recover from it. Once you've saved up $1,000 in emergency fund, the next step would be to save 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. Let me say that again. essential living expenses, not 3 to 6 months of your salary, but 3 to 6 months of those things that you absolutely need to survive. I know most of us might feel like we need our pizza, our Domino's, our Starbucks, but what do you really need to live off of each month? What you need is a place to stay. So you need to be able to cover your rent or your mortgage. You need to have your utilities on. Most people don't want to be sitting down eating out of a can. You want to be able to heat up and eat your food. You also need transportation to get to and from your job, as well as to get any dependents that live with you to where they need to be. So you need food, transportation, utilities. Those are the things that you absolutely require. Right? Moving on next, the next thing that you would do is you would start what we call the debt snowball. Now, why do we call it that? What happens when you take a small piece of a snowball and you roll it down on top of a mountain? As it gets closer and closer to the bottom of the hill, it gets bigger and bigger. Same thing happens with your debt snowball. The first thing that you do is you pay off your lowest debt first. Now, for a lot of people, they probably raise their eyebrows. Shouldn't I pay off my highest debt first that has the highest interest rate? Studies show that whenever you complete a behavior, there's a feedback loop in your brain that makes it more likely that you'll continue with that behavior as you continue to make check marks. So the more you check off those smaller boxes, those smaller debts you owe, the more likely you're then willing to continue with that behavior and pay off the bigger debts. And that's how that snowball grows and grows and grows. Now, the next step, once we get to step number 4, is when you actually start investing. Well, why wouldn't you start investing earlier if you're looking to build wealth? Well, what sense does it make to invest $1,000 and then to have to take that $1,000 out and pay interest again? What you want to do is wait until you're in a position where you can consistently put aside 15% of your salary. Remember that figure that I gave you at the beginning, that $900 to $1,750. For most people, 15% of their salary, the average salary, would only be between $500 and $750 a month. That's only 1/3 of the unnecessary expenses that we've covered in the beginning. Now, I know most of you can't believe that you could go without your Sunday night football, without your HGTV and those various different things, but are you willing to sacrifice something for a little while so that you can live like no one else for the rest of your life? Step number 6 is when you would begin to put aside money for your kids' college fund. Again, a lot of people raise their eyebrows and say, why wouldn't I start saving for my children's education before I start saving for anything else? Because the truth is, your children can take out a loan for their education, but mom and dad can't take out a loan for retirement. If you want to be the greatest help to your children, don't allow yourself to be a burden to them in your older age, needing them to take care of you. If you take care of your retirement and then put what you can towards their education to limit the amount of debt that they can go into in order to get a better education than you, then you're setting your children up for success. You're freeing them to fly higher than you did. After you've saved $1,000 for emergency fund, after you saved 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses, after you started that debt snowball, and after you start to invest 15% monthly, when you start putting aside money for your kids' college education, you now only have one thing left that's over your head that's holding you down, and that's your mortgage. Only then do you start paying it down. But once again, hold on, Doc, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't I pay off my mortgage sooner? Or even why would I wait? Why would I start paying off my mortgage when I can deduct that money that I pay in mortgage as an expense on as a deduction on my tax account? Well, I tell you what, if you think that that's a good idea, paying $1,000 in interest so that you can deduct 20% of that back for your taxes, why don't you send that $1,000 to me and let me send you back a check for $200? If you think that's such a good idea, please make me rich and I will be more than happy to do that for you. But that's exactly what you're doing for the bank. You're giving them $1,000, and if you're lucky, you get a 20% rebate back, which means that they're giving, or Uncle Sam is giving you $200 back for every $1,000 that you paid the bank. I want you instead to pay yourself that $1,000 and keep all of it. And so that you can be more quickly done with that mortgage so that you can move to step number 7, which is after you've lived a disciplined life like no one else is willing, you can now live a financially free life like no one else is willing. I know I covered those quickly, but again, if you want to get more in depth on that, feel free to reach out to me. Also, feel free to go to daveramsey.com where you can get more detailed information about both of those steps. Now, I hope that I have your attention, And I hope that we don't lose it as we now start to talk about the 7 healthy baby steps. Because again, what does it matter how much you have in the bank account if you don't have the energy, the oxygen in your lungs to be able to get out there and enjoy spending it? Remember the rich fool that said, self, look at all that I've stored up. Let me sit back and kick it for a while. And what did the Lord say to him? You fool, your soul will be required of you this very day. Let's not fall into that same category. So moving on quickly to the 7 healthy steps to life. Number 1, stop smoking or doing drugs. Now, I may be preaching to the choir here, but do you understand that the number 1 factor that makes the biggest difference in longevity is whether or not you smoke or do drugs? And just let that sink in. The number 1 factor that you can do to change your life to add longevity to you is to stop smoking or doing drugs. And if you do smoke, after 1 year, the protective cells that line your airway that help to prevent you from getting frequent respiratory infections begin to come back. After 5 years, your chance of getting lung cancer starts to go back to as if you had never smoked. And at 10 years, your chance of getting cancer of the respiratory tract goes back to as if you had never smoked a cigarette in your life. As long as you stop smoking before you develop an oxygen need. So before you develop what's called COPD, those are the people that you see walking around with the oxygen tanks. Step number 2, learn your family history. This is something that disproportionately affects African Americans. We do not know our history. 75% of the information that I need as a physician to help you is to know what your risk factors are. Do you have a strong history of high blood pressure, of cardiovascular disease, of strokes? If you know that, then it changes how aggressive I need to be with you. It changes what things I need to screen you for. Do you have more than 2 first-degree relatives with breast cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer? That changes everything. Instead of screening you at age 50, we now need to start screening you at 10 years before your youngest family member developed symptoms. Your family history has direct impact upon your health and upon the screening that needs to be done to keep you healthy. Step number 2 is to get regular checkups. Most of us wouldn't dare skip an oil change, or at least after we skip one and the engine head cracked, we won't skip one again, but we'll skip our regular checkups on our health. Instead of every 3 to 6 months for your car, you only have to come in once every 12 months. And if you keep those preventative checks up, you can keep your bill down low. I'll give you one quick example that I always think of. In college, living on a very limited budget, I remember turning my car to the right one day and hearing a cracking sound. Took it to a mechanic. He told me I had a crack in my CV boot, and it cost me $25 to repair. In 1996, $25 was a lot of money to a broke Black kid. So I didn't get it fixed. 3 weeks later, I go to turn my wheel to the right, and it won't turn back. That crack in my CV boot had completely broken. And instead of $25, it cost me $250. I sat embarrassed sitting on a bus for a month before I could save up that $250. And I never ignored a funny sound in my car again. Don't let the same thing happen to you. Get your $25 problem checked before it becomes a $250 problem. The next step that we have after getting regular checkups is to start moving. Get out, do things. You don't need to run a marathon. Do you know that walking in 3 10-minute segments every day can add anywhere from 5 to 15 years to your life? And if you want to be more likely to be consistent in your exercise, get an accountability partner. Get someone able to walk with you because you're less likely to skip a day when someone else is depending upon you. Step number 5 would begin to watch what you eat. Do you know that not only has an impact upon you, but upon your children? And even more so, I'm talking to the men out there, because men, believe it or not, your children's diet is most closely connected to what the father in the household eats. And even if you're not an in-home father, if your children are spending at least 1 day a week with you, their diet is going to, as an adult, reflect most closely what they ate when they're with their father. So you can directly decrease the chances of your children being obese, overweight, and having all the other complications that go along with that by being careful of eating. You don't have to be a vegetarian, but you do need to make sure that you have a significant amount of plant protein and plant sources in your diet. Right? Step number 6 would be to minimize your caffeine and alcohol intake. Now, why would I need to do that? Have you ever seen someone in the morning when they don't get their cup of coffee that they used to? Have you ever seen yourself in the morning if you normally have coffee before you get it? Right? Why? Because your body has become addicted. It's become used to having the caffeine, and it doesn't function well when it's not there. Not much different than someone who's smoking marijuana, crack cocaine, or anything else. I know what I'm saying may seem radical to you, but having caffeine dependence can increase your blood pressure. It increases the amount of stress in your body, which increases the amount of cortisol that you release, which increases the chances that you'll have a heart attack or a stroke. Don't believe me? Google when is the most likely time period that someone is to have a heart attack or a stroke. It's Monday morning before they go to work because it's stress related. That is the most likely time that you're to have a stress-related death, because you're stressing about going to this job that you don't really want to be at. The last step is step number 7. Just like being financially free, when you're living healthfully and free, you get to enjoy lower premiums and an improved quality of life. I can tell you, or you can probably see by all these white hairs on my face, that I'm 45 years young, not old, young. And I can tell you that I'm in the best shape of my life, because instead of just being a physician who was telling his patients what to do from what he read, I started adopting these own principles. And at 45, I can lift more, run faster, do more, have better endurance than I did when I was 23. And it's because I follow all of these principles, not just the 7 financial steps, but the 7 healthy steps as well. Again, this was just a quick overview. I'm always available for people that would like to discuss this more. And I believe firmly, and I guarantee you firmly, that if you follow these steps, that I can tell you from my own life, that it will change you and it will release you from the bonds that hold you today. Thank you for your time.
Wow.